Whether you take off cruising without a refrigerator or it fails underway, you can eat well without a fridge on board. Hey, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll share my best tips for eating delicious fridge-free meals without resorting to ready-to-eat meals in a bag. Hey, but first, this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Fast Seas, budget-friendly weather routing and passage planning for cruisers by a cruiser. Plan your next passage using Fast Seas. Whether you are after speed or comfort, Fast Seas will find the optimum route to your destination. Use coupon code BG20 at fastseas.com. That's FASTSEAS.com. You're going to get an exclusive 10% discount. Fast Seas, making weather routing simple. Now, we've used them on our passages to the Bahamas, and I have to say their predictions were spot on. While both our cruising boats have had refrigeration, I've done several long-term camping trips without refrigeration. And on 4 different occasions, Dave and I have gone 2 months or longer without a refrigerator, and we ate well. Even if your boat has refrigeration, it's a good idea to at least think about what you'd do if it should die. Dave and I always figured that we could just continue on with our plans. No, we wouldn't have cold drinks, and some of our food would probably be wasted. But that was a better option than missing some prime cruising time while waiting for repairs or parts. We could always do the repairs when we were in town for other reasons. Now, I'll be honest, for long-term cruising and living aboard, having a refrigerator is nice, and most of us do cruise with refrigeration. I only have one friend currently that cruises without it. But I'll be honest, refrigeration is not essential, whether you're on board or even living ashore. Don't let the lack of refrigeration stop you from cruising, whether it's for a weekend or an open-ended trip. The trick to not being deprived is to plan your provisions and meals so that you're not eating make-do meals, but real meals. Yeah, you can buy those freeze-dried pouches and just add boiling water. But honestly, they're not too appetizing for eating day in and day out. There are lots of better options using real food. Admittedly, there's some differences in how you might do things if you set off without refrigeration versus what you would stock as a backup plan. Well, let's talk about some of these things. Okay, first is canned meat. Unless you're a vegetarian, canned meat is a core food when you don't have refrigeration. Even if you have refrigeration, it's a good idea to keep some on hand in case the refrigeration goes out. Or, if you're like us and just don't have room to keep too much fresh or frozen meat. Now, canned meat isn't all Spam and tuna casserole. You can make a wide variety of meals with canned meats once you've learned a few tricks for keeping it from turning to mush. Big things are added at the very end of cooking and don't stir it very much. It's already cooked. You don't need to cook it a lot, and don't stir it. That way it's not going to turn to mush. I've got tons of canned meat meal ideas. They're all listed. There's a link in the show notes for you to find it. Too long for me to list here. Okay, let's talk about veggies. If you leave port without a refrigerator, you're going to have a cooler with some ice, and you'll stow your veggies. But if you have a refrigeration that gives out, the situation's a little different. The icebox can be used as a cooler, but you're not going to have ice until the next time you're able. But still, there are tons of vegetables that do well without refrigeration, and this can help stretch your small refrigerator too. Be sure to have things like potatoes, onions, cabbage, carrots, celery, squash. They'll all last longer than you expect. Tomatoes can be bought in varying stages of ripeness and will ripen in sequence. Oranges can be wrapped in aluminum foil and will last anywhere from weeks to months. Now, most boats also carry a variety of canned vegetables, and these go a long way in providing variety if you don't have refrigeration. For example, while lettuce is almost impossible to keep without refrigeration, you can make a great salad from canned ingredients. One of my favorites is canned green beans. I use them as a base for a salad, then toss in some, say, tomatoes, onions, whatever else you want. top it with a vinaigrette, and you've got a great salad. Now, we always carried a stock of dried fruit, such as raisins, dates, apricots, banana chips, whatever else we can find. Even with refrigeration, many fruits are hard to store on board for very long, so we used both canned and dried to add variety to the menu. If the refrigeration goes out, they're still good. Eggs. Eggs will stay good up to a month. Just turn them over every couple of days to ensure that the inner membrane stays moist. And you can do this even with eggs that were previously refrigerated. Seriously, I do this all the time. We're leaving for the Bahamas in a few days, and I will be taking 60 eggs that came right out of the grocery store refrigerator and keeping them out of the refrigerator. Now, another option, if you need eggs for longer than a month, is powdered eggs. There's some really good ones out there. My favorite brand is called Ova Easy, OVA, the word easy. You can find them on Amazon. Condiments. Most of these condiments, such as like ketchup, mustard, jelly, and so forth, don't really need to be refrigerated. I've kept all of these for 3 to 6 months at a time in the tropics in just a cupboard with no ill effects, not even any mold. Even if they cost a little bit more per ounce, I usually buy smaller containers than I would if we were living ashore, just so that I was opening a fresh container more often. Mayonnaise and items such as salad dressings that might contain mayonnaise are the most troubling. I don't put them in the refrigerator, but I always use a 100% clean spoon, or when possible, I buy squeeze bottles so the contents don't get contaminated. That's the key, not contaminating the contents. It's hard to carry lettuce for a classic tossed salad without refrigeration, but cabbage lasts forever. And another of my favorite salads is coleslaw. You can do anything you want. A simple vinegar and oil dressing is easy to make from non-refrigerated ingredients. And to be honest, that is one of my absolute favorites. Okay, for butter and margarine aren't really a problem if you have a cooler or if you're cruising in temperate climates. Otherwise, you can use canned butter. It's available on Amazon, or oil. Olive oil is great as a dip for bread. Canola oil or vegetable oil work well for most cooking. Ghee is also a very good substitute. Really not a substitute, a way of preserving it. How about milk and other dairy products? Carrying milk and other dairy products without refrigeration can seem like it's an insurmountable problem. It's actually one of the easiest to solve. For milk, you can buy boxed milk in packages like juice cartons in most grocery stores. If you buy small, single-serving boxes, you won't waste any of it if you don't have a cooler. And boxed milk is available everywhere in less developed countries. Another good option are some of the good powdered milks out there. Forget the Carnation and the generic non-fat powdered milks. In the U.S., go to the Latin Mexican foods aisle and look for Nestle Nido Classic. It's fantastic. We also found some great Australian and New Zealand powdered milk in our travels. I'm sure there are other brands too. You can use it to make your own yogurt too. For cooking, cans of evaporated milk work well and can substitute for milk and also for cream. And in the Mexican and Latin foods aisle, and in almost all Latin American countries we've visited, you can find cans or boxes of cream and half cream, basically half and half. They call it media crema. These work well for cooking when you need something richer than evaporated milk, and you can also use them to make your own sour cream by mixing with just a little bit of vinegar. Most cheeses, particularly hard cheeses, will last a month or sometimes more without refrigeration, especially if you store them in the coolest place like in the bilge. Velveeta also does really well without refrigeration, although it must be eaten within a couple of weeks once it's opened. With all these great foods that don't have to be refrigerated, it doesn't take a lot to be able to eat well without refrigeration. On a cold day, you can easily make a pot of chili from a can of roast beef, a can of chili beans, and tomatoes, an onion, green pepper, and some spices. Or a pot of split pea soup with some dried split peas, a can of ham, carrot, an onion, and a few spices. Anyways, enjoy your meals. Enjoy cruising wherever you are. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, and you'll leave us a nice review for others to find us. Until next time, then.